Welcome to Clarity Design Tutorials. Today we're just going to have a quick look at how we can create objects in Maya and then start manipulating them and playing around with them. So I'm just going to show you the marking menu and how we can interact with objects and parts of objects, and we're going to have a whistle-stop tour of how to use the channel menu and the channel bar. Okay, and we're going to keep it nice and simple. The problem with Maya is that it's so complex. It's very easy to just start going off on a tangent of whatever you want to do next, or whatever takes your fancy. So I'm just going to keep it quite tight. So let's see what we can do. Right, so polygons. Now if we wanted to, we could use the shelf. It's a great starting place for knowing where to make things, but that's great. But how about if you want to make something that's not there, for example a helix, which is not on the list here, but we might want to create. So you'll find that anything that you want to make is in the create menu, which is at the top, and it doesn't matter which of these menu sets you have, create is always there. Okay, so you really don't have to worry about that at the moment. So create, and here we're looking at polygons today. NURBS are non-uniform rational B-splines, otherwise known as surfaces on the shelf. Okay, and you will be using those another time, but at the moment we don't need to. Okay, so polygon primitives. Let's just go and make a cube. I'm not going to click on the options. Anytime you see a square like that means there's an option menu. We don't need to do that because once we've made it, there'll be a history that we can go and edit anyway. So I can drag this cube out. I'm just going to press Shift actually, because that's going to allow me to drag it out the same in all dimensions. Sorry. And immediately I'm coming over to the channel box. I'm going to zero that out so it's centralized in my scene, and then I'm going to go to inputs, and this is what I was talking about. So in the history of the object, you can see that this size is not very nice to remember, 3.814. So let's just change that up to 4. And I can also subdivide the shape here. If I'm not sure how many times I'd like to subdivide it, I can type it in, or I can click on the word and I can middle click and drag sideways. So middle click and drag sideways, backwards and forwards, and I can subdivide it the number of times I want, so I can separate it up. Remember that every time you subdivide a polygon, you're adding more memory usage to the computer. So every time you put a new vertex, now a vertex is one of these spots on the corner, and every time you add a new spot, you're adding a point where the computer can manipulate that shape, but you're also adding a little bit more use of memory. Now polygons are made up of these spots called vertex, the edges, and the faces. And you can select and manipulate all three of those, and quite simply pulling them about to edit the shape as you want. Now what I'm using there to get to those options is called the marking menu. Now if I click over here, you can see that I don't get the same menu. If I click here, then I get a different menu, and that click is actually a right click. So if I right click on it, then I can go and get these different options. If I want to then start using or manipulating this as a whole object again, instead of as part of an object, I need to go to the marking menu and go back to object mode. And you'll notice the colour of the selection: pale green, right click, edge, pale blue. Okay, and that's really important because we often get people who get a little bit confused when starting out with Maya, that hang on, I can't select it as an object anymore. You just need to right click and go back to object mode, and that will sort you out. So now that you know how to subdivide a basic shape, you can start pulling it about, and you start making shapes that are much more useful, unlike this one, useful to you, and you can start playing around with them. So have a play with it. Try out selecting faces. See what happens if you use the rotate or the scale tools while selecting different faces, and see what you can do. See what happens. And we're going to leave it there just to see if you can play with that a little bit.